It's a new year. And the nice thing about something that's new is you get to, I feel like this time of year is really all about taking a look at what you did last year and going, what do I want to do differently? Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today, we're talking about the new year because it's a new year, friends. So, we wanted to really jump into what does 2025, I keep wanting to say 2029, I don't know why, but 2025 have in store for us. So, in case we haven't met, my name is Karen.
And my name is Ashley. It's probably because it's the 9 year.
Yeah, that's why, honestly, because I keep thinking about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited about the new year. I did watch, this is like totally sidetracked, but this is where my brain is squirreling right now.
mm.
I was watching a story yesterday about a girl who was like, oh, like energetically, this isn't the new year because we're still in like the winter stage and like until spring, it's not really the time of new stuff.
Oh,
And
I got
so,
chills as you talked about that. Oh,
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
And so many things like as we like think about that, like I'm like that makes sense in so many ways. And so I want to dig into that. Haven't yet, so it's kind of like premature for this podcast, but it's we're connected, so we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so for me, I resonated with that so much because when we've talked about numerology in the past couple of years, like I think we got our numerology kick right before 2023 because it was the 7 year and we're
Mm.
both sevens. And I think
Mm.
we that's when we kind of started diving in. So it would be like 2, 3 years ago into numerology. And both of the last 2 years, it feels like we're still riding that year until more around that springtime. Like if
Mm.
you think about like the trust and openness year, that flowed into the
Yeah,
beginning
you're
of
right.
2024.
Mhm.
And then I know like with that year flowing in, the abundant year more so started around that late spring time is when I started to feel that energy shift. And for me right now, I still feel energetically connected to the abundant year more than the 9 completion year. But I can see kind of foresee how that's going to play out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. No, but like, what is it? The Chinese New Year doesn't start till like March, right? Like, so
That would make sense.
that would make total sense. What like that whole process of
Hmm.
springtime and spring bringing in the new and that whole deal. So, yeah, that's fascinating. I never made that connection until you just said that right now. That it's like, oh yeah, like spring is what brings in the new. And it's like, oh yeah. Like, and you're right, in the past, I've also noticed this with myself too, where it's like that last year really is still kind of flowing until about springtime, which is around March, right? So,
So the Chinese New Year is January 29th this
oh,
year.
is it? Oh, okay. I thought it was in March. Okay. Good to know. I'm glad you looked
I
that
think
up.
that there is something that they celebrate more into the spring because I know there's
Yeah.
lots of like, fireworks and stuff that
Yeah, for
we have
sure.
here. But yeah, and like I understand there's going to be that transitional period too. But when that person said that on her story about how like energetically we're not in the new year yet, I was like, that makes so much sense.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And one thing, I was watching a TikTok, this just popped up for me today, and I was switching back and forth between my different TikToks, right? Because I have many different ones one that I just scroll and then others that I actually post on. But the one I switched to the one where I just scroll, and the first thing that popped up was about numerology, and I was like, "Well, this
Mhm.
is weird," because I watch a lot of that kind of stuff on there, but I don't always watch numerology stuff. So it was like, oh, interesting that that popped up. But this girl was talking about how, yes, each year has its own numerology. So like 2024 was your abundance, 2025 is like that completion. But what about your specific numerology too for that year? So adding up for your birthday. So, like, my birthday is 11/9. 2025. So when I added all of that up, it was a 2 for me. So this is actually a 2 year for me, which 2 is all about balance, which is crazy because that's literally the place that I find myself in right now, where I'm like, how do I find the balance to create what I want to create, right?
Yeah.
So, like the collective this year is all
Yeah.
about completion. We're completing a cycle. But what's your specific numerology too? And like jumping into that, I was like, oh yeah, that does make a whole lot of sense too. So like last year for me being a 1 year, I'm like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking at it from that perspective and do a little bit more deep dive into it, it's like, oh yeah, for me specifically, my energy is currently in this year.
Mm.
So, so I just thought that was an interesting reminder that popped up today because
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking about it's just crazy how you create things when you're thinking about them.
Mhm.
But I was sitting there thinking about how 2025 was the year of completion. And then I literally pop up TikTok, and that is one of the first few videos that show up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, great reminder that the
So,
2025 is like the collective, and then the me is the
yeah.
two.
Did she say in the video to add your birthday that way? Because our mentor used to say to add your age. And is it the same number?
So she said to add your birthday
Birthday?
that way. And I actually feel like it is the same number. I feel like I tested it once.
Really?
Um, But the book that explains everything for numerology that I love this book is by Dan Millman. I gotta find it really fast. So, but he if you want to know like a really good basis for understanding numerology, Dan Millman has a fantastic book that can really help you understand where you currently are in your cycle for the year, So I can't pull up my Kindle for some reason. It's
And
like,
that's
go ahead.
your life's purpose or a different book?
Yes, that's the one I'm trying to find, but can't. But yeah, it's the life purpose one. Hold on, let me see if I can.
You're looking like the exact title is what you're looking for?
Yeah, exactly. Because who wants to be like, what was the book she was talking about? I can't. Okay, The Life You Were Born to Live is
Oh, okay.
it's by Dan Millman, and it's all about understanding your specific numerology. And there's
Hmm.
actually like when you do grab that book, there's actually a website that you can go to and you can type in what your birthday is, and it will help you figure out what your numerology is for that year also. So it's a really
Hmm.
helpful book to it's insightful because it helps you understand not only yourself but maybe important people in your life too. I
Yeah.
know I plugged in my husband, I plugged in my brother's kids because I just wanted to know what are they. So how do I relate better to them? So yeah, it's a really helpful book, and it's got a really great chart that you can like go and type in what's my birthday, and it'll spit out what's the year that you're currently working on. What are you doing? So,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah, because our mentor that introduced that book to us
mhm,
too, she always said like add your age. And
mhm,
that is um what your like year's about. And so I've done that lots, and my age has correlated with the year. So last year my number was 8. My age is the same as it is like 2025 is 9 and my age is 9.
mhm.
So 36. But then if I add my birthday the way you said, like my month plus my day plus 2025, my number is 7.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to do numerology, and it's kind of like astrology as well, in that there's more than one facet to it, right? So, like, I was having that thought too of, okay, so the collective is currently working on completion, right? And last year, the collective was currently working on, and you're part of the collective, right? You're part of that energy still. But then there's also other facets to what you're currently working on. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's fascinating, interesting stuff to look into. As we always say, or maybe I say more than you do, but like at the end of the day, you create your own life, right?
Hmm.
Like, so like
Yep.
these things can be an insight into what could be going on, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I know I have a friend recently, I've been diving more into the gene keys because she's obsessed with it. And she was like, look into your gene keys. And the first two gene keys that I was looking at, I was like, oh, yeah, that's me to a T. And then the last one, I was like, that is nothing. Literally the opposite of who I am. But one thing that she said that was interesting too, she's like, just because like it's in your gene key for a reason, right? Just because you don't specifically have that trait, do you see it played out in your
Mhm.
reality? And I kind of had to think about it and I was like, I don't know that I see it really like so the trait is codependency, right? Like I am 0% codependent. Like I literally am like I'm going to do it on my own. Like and my one of my first gene keys was all about my creativity and I'm just like this crazy creative person. I always have been. I like to do things to my own beat. I like to push the limits with things. That's just how I've always been, right? So I love to see something new that I've never done and go, ooh, what could I do with that, right? Like I've always been like that. So that was like totally me to a T. So when you added the codependency to it, I was like, I do not see it at all, like at all. And
Yeah.
but when she said, well, you might want to just sit and contemplate it, because she's like, really, the big thing about gene keys is just sitting and contemplating, sitting and spending time with it over and over and over again and asking yourself, is this actually showing up? I mean, this is what I
Mhm.
do with all things in my life, right? So, one thing that Richard Rudd, he's the creator of the gene keys, one thing that he did say that actually did resonate with this specific gene key was you may have a codependency to a past, not a past self, but like your current self, but like um something, a habit that you have, a codependency to a habit. And I'm like, yeah, I could see that. But I was kind of like, I feel like we all can have that just because that's the way our brain is wired, because we like to do things that we've done already because it feels safe for us, right? So, but that was one that I really had to kind of sit with and be like, I just don't know. That one's really hard for me. So, at the end of the day, let these things just be a insight as to what might be going on, but you don't have to believe everything you hear at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about it just now because we were talking about like how like I really feel like that year, like the abundance year started more in the spring.
Mm,
And so if I base it off of my age, that would make sense because my birthday is in March.
mm-hmm,
And so like that could be like the collective year starts sooner or not. Maybe it is more like springtime because even the Jewish calendar is different than ours too.
mm-hmm,
I don't know how many days they have in their year, but they have a different amount of days in their year. And so, but then if it was more my personal age based, that would really line up for
mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a new year. And the nice thing about something that's new is you get to, I feel like this time of year is really all about taking a look at what you did last year and going, what do I want to do differently?
yeah.
So many of us have New Year's resolutions. I stopped doing New Year's resolutions. I don't think I ever did them because it was kind of like, well, I can start a resolution at any time in my life. I don't have
Mhm.
to wait for a new year kind of thing. So, but it's just that time to kind of reflect and go, what did I do last year and what do I want to do differently? And I
Mhm.
think that that freshness, that newness is really like you can feel that specifically in the collective right now, that everybody is like, okay, it's time to kind of look and see, like, maybe I need to take better care of my health, or I need to eat better, or I need to spend more time with my family or whatever. So people are just deciding, okay, it's time to do something a little bit differently. So that's
Mhm.
honestly one of the nicest things about this time of year, is you can really feel that energy that's created. And the wonderful thing about that is you can feel that manifestation energy. And this just, I don't know, it's just a really nice magical time to really work with that energy if you're aware that you can.
Well, and I think for me, I am someone that loves New Year's resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know that they can happen anytime
Mm-hmm.
too. Kind of like my two biggest times that I do like resolutions, I don't really ever call them that,
Mm-hmm.
but I always do them at the beginning of the year. And then I also whenever I'm at the ocean. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
mentor tell me that the ocean is just so powerful for bringing things to you and taking things away from you. And so if you do those kind of resolutions while at the ocean, it's just this like more powerful manifesting because to me resolutions are about okay, what were the things that I don't want to keep on repeating in my life
Mm-hmm.
and what are the things that I want to keep repeating in my life or
Right.
want to create completely from new. And the ocean really signifies that. So whenever I go to the ocean, I always take a minute to be like, what am I gonna give to the ocean and let it take away, and what am I gonna have it bring to me? So I did that just recently when I was in Mexico. I know you probably have a little bit, you go there a little bit more frequently than I do to the
Mm-hmm.
um, but then too because I just went in the beginning of December, I was saying to my partner, I'm like, oh, let's do our New Year's resolutions. He's like, we just did that. I'm like, well, yeah, but like now it's a new year, so we do it again. And so he's like you, he's like, I can just create my life however I want, whenever I want. Um, but he did sit down with me and do a little bit. And for me, I just like that freshness. And this year feels more powerful because just before New Year's, I was at the ocean and I did make changes. And I made changes that has some pretty good compound effects pretty quickly. Um, and so that's carrying into the new year. So I have that like head start, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because you can start new anytime. And so, yeah, I just feel like a lot of things happened in Mexico that were very powerful. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I kind of said this on my message to you last night, but I want to share this with everyone too. Just being in a new environment,
Hmm.
even if you didn't go to the beach, maybe you went to the mountains or whatever, just being in a new environment can
Hmm.
really help to jumpstart us as well, because we're not looking at things that we always look at. So
Hmm.
our brain is not making the same associations with things. And so having a new environment can allow us to start fresh and start new as well. So, I mean, that's the
Hmm.
beautiful thing about going on vacation, because you actually can kind of disconnect from what you have been doing for a little while. And if you're aware, if you're self aware enough, you can realize, ooh, I have been doing that when I go home. Or when I'm at home, I do that. When I do go home, maybe I should be a little bit more aware so that I
Hmm.
don't continue doing that habit, or maybe I do want to continue a specific habit, you know? So it's a really good time for reflection if you're aware,
Hmm.
um, to, like, when you take yourself out of your normal environment, reflect on what you do, and see, hey, can I change this? Can I do something differently? And I can start now in a totally different environment. And when I go home, I can keep doing that habit and keep creating that in my life. So,
Yeah. Well, I think like there's so much power in certain nature things too. Like I
mm-hmm,
was just reading or not reading, I had a TikTok about how waterfalls have the positive oh, I'm gonna say the word wrong. Anons.
You'd have
And
to
so
spell it. I don't know.
they create like manifestation, like
Hmm.
more powerful manifestation, and they can eliminate depression and anxiety and that kind of stuff. And also they're very common, or the place they are the most is at the top of a mountain or the
Mm,
bottom of a waterfall.
mm,
And I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh yeah, I feel so great when I am like in the mountains, like at the
mhm,
top of the mountains. And so I'm like, that's really cool that that's there because I feel this like complete gravitation to being up at the mountains all the time. Like we bought passes this year because I just love being up there. So anon is anion. So I did say it right, is a negatively charged ion.
mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, let's be honest, nature has a way of
Hmm.
helping us reset. And probably one of the biggest reasons that many of us don't feel good on a regular basis is because we're not out in nature enough. Just
Yeah.
barefooted, just standing on Mother Earth, like
Hmm.
there's so much healing that can come in when we do that. And um, I'm speaking to myself because this is exactly what I do. I will go through my day like running to get everything done, right? Like this is my past self. I'm done. I'm done with this experience, and I every time I notice that I'm doing it, I'm like, "Nope, I can slow down. It's okay. I don't need to run around." But what I have a tendency of having done in the past is I'll run around, get things done, and then I'll just collapse on the couch and there's nothing left, right? So I don't want to do that in my life anymore. I'm not interested in that feeling. And there's nothing wrong with getting things done. That's actually a beautiful thing. Like doing things in a physical 3D reality is a beautiful thing. But it should not cause us to feel exhausted by the time we're done. So Richard Rudd talks about this too. Like you see kids run around, they have so much energy. They run around until they're completely exhausted. They take a nap or they eat, and then they continue to run around again and again because they're not standing there obsessing over all the things that could go wrong. They're not standing there obsessing about how am I going to hurt myself or how do I pay this bill or how do I whatever. Like it's those thoughts that exhaust us. Those
Yeah.
things that we're thinking on a regular basis that are exhausting. Whereas a
Hmm.
child can have multitudes upon multitudes of energy because they're not worried about what's going to happen next. They're
Yeah.
not sitting there thinking about the worst case scenario. And this is what's exhausting to us, okay? Like this is I'm speaking to myself more than anybody, really, if I'm being honest. But if somebody gets something from this, great.
Yeah.
But what I notice for myself is when I run around and I'm like, I got to get this done because if I don't, then this will happen. That's
Hmm.
exhausting instead of going, "Ooh, I got to get this done because I actually do enjoy this and I want to do it," right?
Hmm.
Like I want to do this thing because it makes me happy. That's what a
Hmm.
kid does. Like, I mean, hello, like it's not that hard, but it is at the same time because we have practiced the other way for so long. And
Well,
there's
I
something
think
about going
it's,
back to that childlike innocence too.
yeah. I think it's that, and I think it's screens, and I think it's what we're eating. Like, I just like, to me, like, that's been, like, I've always thought this, but like, I have been tired for a long time. And I've blamed situations in my life for being tired. And I'm like, no, like, I'm on too many screens. I'm not fueling my body efficiently. I'm doing better than a lot of people, but it's still not efficient. And I'm not outside enough. Like those are the key things. Like my kids are not the way I was when I was a kid. Like that running around constantly, they don't do that.
Mm.
They complain about sore backs. They complain about being tired. Like my youngest was carrying his skis back to the car and he was complaining about how he needed a break and it was too hard. And he was exhausted. And there's factors that contributed to that, but kids today are different than they used to be because of what we're feeding them, because of how much they're on screens and how little they are outside. Um, like we took our kids to the chiropractor to like just see like kind of where they were at. Like we didn't do any like actual adjustments on them, sadly, but um they got like x-rays done to see like where they were at, and their back was awful just from being on screens all the time, and they're only on screens half the time because we don't do screens at our house. And the chiropractor was like, yeah, like we have kids that are under 10 years old and their backs are worse than 40-year-olds because of how much they're looking down like this on a tablet or a phone or whatever. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you that there's so many things that are contributing to this as an adult. I think that like social media is like the worst thing ever, which is funny because both of us make money off of social media.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the worst thing ever because it puts you into this like comparing mentality, and then it also puts you on a screen, and both suck the happiness from you.
Yeah. One of the biggest things, though, you just talked about the comparing mentality. You don't have to do that.
Mm.
You do not have to do that. And I
Mhm.
literally, this is one of the things that I talk about when I talk about needing to be in more balance is I do not have to compare myself to anyone else. And I will tell you, I am leaps and bounds from where I used to be when it came to social media. Because I remember opening my social media and being like, I know my post is better than that person's post. Why
Mm.
did it get this amount of views? I don't do that anymore because I don't care. This is how far I've come. Okay. I had somebody that I don't know commented on one of my videos yesterday and was like, this is hilarious. Why don't you have more views? And I was like, I don't know and I don't care. That was literally my first thought. I don't
Yeah.
care because I had a lot of fun creating this video. It was
Mhm.
literally about a bidet. I was playing in the toilet. Okay. I had so much fun with the video. And if that person laughed, great. If nobody else wants to watch it, I don't care anymore.
Mhm.
That is like no longer a part of my frequency. I will tell you that. It's because I chose to
Mhm.
not let that be a part of my frequency anymore. And just talking about this is actually showing me how far I've come because in the past that would have bothered me too. I would have been like, "What the fuck?" Like I literally would have just like sat and commiserated with myself over it for hours. Like, you're right.
Mhm.
This was a good video. And now
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't care. I had
Mhm.
so much fun creating it. Now, for me, the thing that I'm really working on is giving myself the balance of time
Mhm.
because that's still a pressure that I put on myself that I don't
Mhm.
need to. I don't need to feel like this has to get done by this time. I don't
Yeah.
have to do that. And social media has a tendency of making your brain like want to speed up
Yeah.
because it's so overstimulating. And
Mhm.
so when I notice that's probably the best way I've ever said it. It literally makes your brain want to speed up. It's literally like crack for your brain, okay? So when I notice that I jump into that tendency, I'm like, "Oh, I got to stop. I can't do that anymore." That makes me feel sick. That
Yeah.
makes me feel like things have to get done ASAP. And so
Yeah.
it's all like, I don't know, like for me, it's all such a choice. It's
Mhm.
all such a programming that I don't have to step into the programming and I don't have to accept that programming anymore. And
Yeah.
so it's a constant, I don't like the word battle, but it's a constant noticing. It's a
Mhm.
constant like, what am I doing with my thoughts? So yeah, I don't know. For me, I always go back to the thoughts because it's all so freaking connected to the thought. Like
Mhm.
you talked about eating. There's a thought there that caused the eating, right? There's an emotional need that haven't figured out is under the surface, right? And it's like, ooh, I had a mentor say this to me once and it will always stick with me. Um, are you eating that sugar because you're craving the sugar, or are you craving the guilt that you feel after you eat the sugar? That's a big one when you actually think about that, because there's an emotional attachment that you want to keep having over and over again, right? And so, like, when I heard that, I went, ooh, that
Hmm.
at the end of the day is the underlying thing that I have a choice to deal with or not deal with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and I think like with that whole eating thing for me, it was about something easy I can control to feel happy.
yeah,
It was
interesting.
like, ooh, this will make me feel happy. Like food brings me joy. And so I can go and eat this bad thing and feel joy. And then afterwards I feel tired and
Mm,
awful. And
mm.
so it's probably both. But
Yeah,
um
I would definitely say that there's a connection to the tired and awful, that there's a cycle, you know, like, and I have to
yeah.
look at that with myself too. Like, ooh, there's a cycle I'm addicted to.
Well, and I think it's less that because so when I was in Mexico, none of the food made me feel happy and it made me feel tired and not happy.
Mm,
It made me feel tired and sore. And so I stopped eating. Like what I didn't eat the normal things I would eat. And I was in Mexico, so I drank a lot instead.
great.
And had a lot of fruit and that kind of stuff because
Mm,
fruit was the only thing that I found joy in
mm,
eating there because everything else was very bland
mhm,
and not enjoyable. And so that's why I would say my connection with it is more for the joy because when I remove the joy and I just experience the tiredness and the like soreness, I stopped doing it completely.
mhm.
And I started eating differently um, after I was in Mexico, and the joy was still there, and I was feeling awesome. And I literally didn't struggle with it at all. Um, I had no desire to eat anything that would make me feel tired and sore.
Mhm,
So for me, I do think it's more of a joy thing where I will sacrifice the later feeling.
mhm,
If later I'm going to feel awful, I will sacrifice that to feel joy in the moment.
mhm.
And thankfully, I have figured out some things that bring me joy and make me feel really good after. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always about self-analyzing, because I really don't think that anybody can do that for you. Like, you can have somebody come in, like, you can have a mentor come in and be like, this is the pattern that I see.
yeah.
But the emotional connection, I truly believe you're the only one that can really dig that out,
Hmm.
because you, at the end of the day, you know what the you can see the pattern in your own life if you're looking, right? Like, you can start to really dig that out, whereas someone else can see the pattern but they can't see the emotional
Hmm.
connection to the pattern.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the other person will take their own life experiences and put their emotional pattern in for you, and that's not always quite the
Hmm.
answer, right? um I think that, like, I don't want anybody to think that, like, having a mentor or somebody that you talk to about these things is like, oh, I don't need that. Because there are still, like, I do feel like a mentor can really help us see patterns that maybe we didn't see in the first place.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's our job to dig out what's the emotional connection. What's the
Yeah.
emotional thing that I'm actually connected to that's causing me to do this XYZ thing that I don't actually want to do anymore, but I keep
Hmm.
doing because I'm comfortable doing it.
Hmm.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that all comes back to the whole new year, like lots of people are like, new year, new me. And it's like, I get it, but you have a lot of habit patterns to break
Mm-hmm.
and you can do it anytime. And it's about being aware of those things and making those changes because we can create our life for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a process. It's all a process. Like,
Hmm.
some days I wake up and I feel overwhelmed by the process. And then I'm like, well, it's a step by step process. Like, I remind myself, it's a step by step process. I don't have to wake up tomorrow and be perfect.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that, actually. Because at the end of the day, perfection has its own pitfalls as well. So it's
Mhm.
like, just wake up and enjoy your life.
Yeah.
That in the at the end of the day, that waking up and enjoying your life is really the perfection that I think that we should all strive for, where
Yeah.
it's like, no matter what's happening, even if I somehow have created this crazy chaos in my life, how do I enjoy it? How do I laugh with it? How do I have fun with it too? Because that's the only way through. Can't take life too seriously. I've done that for everyone else, so you don't have to.
Well, and that's the key thing is finding out how to laugh at it and not care about it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but with that, I think we're gonna call this one a wrap because this was a good conversation, and I think it's a good place to really look at the new year and what we want to create, and yeah, some really good thoughts and ideas in here. So, with that, if you are watching us on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. What's your New Year's resolution? What are the things that you want to create this year? And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, go ahead, give us a 5-star. Let us know once again in the comments what your thoughts are and what your resolutions are. So, with that, we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. See everyone next time. Thanks so much for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue hanging out with us, and don't forget to subscribe.